Mr. Rafael Olivera Cintrón to take a seat at the petitioner's table and to address the committee. You have the floor, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Rafael Olivera Cintrón. I'm a Puerto Rican living in the United States as a colonial migrant. I'm referring to myself as this because as a colonial migrant, millions of fellow Boricuas, poor in social economic conditions created by 125 years of U.S. colonialism in Puerto Rico, pushed my family to migrate to the United States. In fact, since 2010 alone, Puerto Rico has lost about 12% of its population due to migration. I represent Boricuas Unidos en la Diáspora, a group of Puerto Ricans in the United States and around the world who have come together to eradicate colonialism and build an independent Puerto Rico. Because under the colonial rule of the United States, Puerto Rico has faced and continues to face worsening crises of democracy, human rights, displacement, economic oppression, childhood poverty, and health inequities. This colonial state also prohibits us from exercising necessary self-empowering autonomous development. Because for over 500 years, external control has disarmed us from solving our own problems. We have not been allowed to create adequate and optimal living conditions for ourselves. Thus, our condition demands attention and urgent action from this assembly. For decades, Puerto Rico's status has been treated as a domestic issue that should be solved through the political process in the United States. Yet through our advocacy work with U.S. lawmakers attempting to promote Puerto Rican decolonization, we know firsthand that these efforts are insufficient. Recently, U.S. lawmakers have drafted legislation on Puerto Rico's status that they know is doomed to fail and that reflects the interests of U.S. politicians, not the needs, rights, and aspirations of the Puerto Rican people. The United States and its lawmakers have no interest in overseeing the dismantling of a colonial system from which they themselves benefit. Therefore, the United States cannot plausibly serve as a just and neutral arbiter of a process that guarantees Puerto Ricans' rights and respects basic standards of self-determination. Our organization has established a framework that we believe should guide any Puerto Rican decolonization process that meets both legally and historically established standards. In it, we demand that the U.S. government enters into bilateral negotiations with Puerto Rico to end the colonial status quo. We demand that any process is fully participatory and fully bilingual. We demand that the preservation of Puerto Rico's language and culture. We demand a restoration of Puerto Rico's land and livelihood. And we demand that the United States puts an expiration date on Puerto Rico's colonial status. The United States continues to resist these and other basic demands. Its elected officials and key stakeholders have not worked towards enacting a viable, inclusive, and democratic process to end colonialism once and for all. The United States and this assembly cannot simply ignore this issue and endlessly perpetuate colonialism and suffering in Puerto Rico. Our mothers and fathers are not able to feed their children. Aunties and uncles are not able to afford their medication. Grandmothers and grandfathers are dying from the heat and from blackouts. Our siblings and cousins are leaving because they can no longer afford to live in their home, Puerto Rico. It is the time. The moment is now. Puerto Ricans want to curate their own experience. We want to create ownership for ourselves. We want and deserve a respectable living. It is long overdue for the United Nations to treat Puerto Rico status as an ongoing crisis and an international priority. We urge you to do so now and join in the efforts of a new generation of Puerto Ricans at home and abroad who want to create a different, just, and free Puerto Rico in this century, not the next. Thank you.
I thank Mr. Olivera.